Common immune disorders. Most important disorders of the immune system are allergies, autoimmune diseases, and immunodeficiencies. So first is the hypersensitivity or the allergy. It is an abnormally vigorous immune response in which the immune system causes tissue damage and it fights off perceived threat that would otherwise harmless to the body. The term allergen came from allo means altered and erd means reaction. So it is used to distinguish this type of antigen from those producing normal immune responses. So most of the time, people do not die of allergies. They are just miserable with them. There are several types of allergies, including reactions where cells are lyse, such as during transfusion reaction and inflammation due to antigen-antibody complexes. There are types of hypersensitivity. So first is the immediate hypersensitivity or acute hypersensitivity. So after sensitization to a particular allergen, this type of response is triggered when the allergen is encountered again. So this secondary responses starts with the release of the flood of histamine with IgE antibodies bind to mast cells. So the histamine causes small blood vessels in the area to become dilated and leaky and is largely to blame for the best recognition symptoms of allergy like a runny nose, watery eyes, and itchy or reddened skin or hives. So when the allergen is inhaled, symptoms of asthma appear because smooth muscles in the walls of the bronchioles contract, so it constricting the passages and restricting airflow. So over-the-counter anti-allergy drugs contain antihistamines that counteract this effect. So most of these reactions begins within seconds after contact with the allergen and lasts about half an hour. So acute allergic response known as anaphylactic shock is fairly rare. So anaphylactic shock occurs when the allergen directly enters the blood and circulates rapidly through the body, as might happen with certain bee stings, spider bites, or an injection of a foreign substances such as horse serum, penicillin, or other drugs that acts as haptens so into susceptible individuals. So food allergies also may trigger anaphylaxis and can be fatal, like peanut or wet allergies. Next is delayed hypersensitivities, imaged mainly by a special subgroup of helper T cells, cytotoxic T cells, and macrophages. So take much longer to appear in 1 to 3 days than any of the acute reactions produced by antibodies. Instead of histamine, the chemicals mediating these reactions are cytokinesis released by the activated T cells. So hence, antihistamines drugs are not helpful against the delayed types of allergy. So the most familiar examples of delayed hypersensitivity reactions are those classed as allergic contact dermatitis, so which follows skin contact with poison ivy, some heavy metals like lead, mercury, and others, and certain cosmetic and deodorant chemicals. So this agent acts as haptens, so after diffusing through the skin and attaching to body proteins, they are perceived as foreign by the immune system. Next is autoimmune diseases. So it occurs when the body's self-tolerance breaks down and antibodies and or T cells attacks the body's own tissue. So some 5% of adults in North America, two-thirds of them women, are afflicted with autoimmune diseases. So the most common are the following. First is the rheumatoid arthritis or the RA, which systematically destroys joints. Second is the multiple sclerosis or the MS, which destroys the white matter or the myelin sheaths of the brain and the spinal cord. Third is the myasthenia gravis, which impairs communication between nerves and the skeletal muscles. Fourth is the Graves' disease, in which the thyroid gland produces excessive amounts of thyroxine in response to autoantibodies that mimic TSH. Next is the glomerulonephritis, a severe impairment of kidney function due to acute inflammation. Next is the type 1 diabetes mellitus, so which destroys pancreatic beta cells, resulting in deficient production of insulin. Lastly is the systemic lupus erythematosus or CLE, a systemic disease that occurs mainly in young women and particularly affects the kidneys, heart, lungs, and skin. Lastly is the immunodeficiencies. So it includes both congenital and acquired conditions in which the production or functions of immune cells or complement is abnormal. So the most devastating congenital conditions now is the severe combined immunodeficiency diseases or the SC so in which there is a marked deficient of both B and T cells, because T cells are absolutely required for normal operations of both arms of the adaptive response. So afflicted children have essentially no protection against pathogens of any type. So the minor infections easily shrugged off by most children are lethal to those with SCID. So bone marrow transplant and umbilical cord blood, which provide normal lymphocytes stem cells, have helped some SCID victims. So without such treatment, the only hope for survival is living behind protective barriers or in the plastic bubble that keep out all infectious agents. Lastly is currently the most important and devastating of the acquired immunodeficiencies is acquired immune deficiency syndrome or the AIDS. So the AIDS cripples the immune system by interfering with the activity of the helper T cells.